Welcome to this week's episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast. And I'm so pleased this week to be joined by Simi Rayat. Simi is an award-winning global business psychologist, executive psychology coach, widely published author of her book, Productivity Joy, which you should absolutely get a copy of, and just a beautiful, beautiful person to spend some time with. She's got over 20 years of experience helping leaders and teams to find more joy in the work that they do. In this conversation, we're going to be exploring the productivity of joy, but in particular, how do we link that to being more deliberate? So enjoy this conversation with Simi. Welcome to this week's episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast. And I'm so glad and lucky today to be joined by friend and author and wonderful woman in leadership, Simi Rayat. Thanks for joining today, Simi.
Oh, thank you for having me, Rita. I'm really excited to be talking about one of my favourite topics today, deliberate leadership.
You're wonderful. And Simi and I have known each other for a little while, and occasionally we've met up for coffee close by, which is beautiful. And I really love, Simi, the message that you spread about joy at work, which, a lot of people are not feeling that joy. So I'd really, I'm looking forward to the conversation today because I think it's going to help so many people that, really want to find that essence of joy and happiness and how we sustain that in work.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. And I think, the conversation today and, the topic, deliberate leadership, I really believe that it's an antidote to the constant busy that we're all living in. So hopefully today's conversation is a reminder that how we lead is just as important or even more important than what we deliver.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, Simi, to start us off, as you mentioned there, we talk a lot about deliberate leadership here at the Deliberate Leader. And I think that there's some beautiful crossover with, in order to be deliberate and to be intentional, it always helps when we're enjoying what we're doing, right? Which is where the productivity of joy comes in. In your experience, what would you say are those characteristics that you've observed, particularly in your role as a psychologist for so many years and working with people in organizations, but what do you reckon are those ingredients or that secret sauce to really showing up and being deliberate?
Yeah, look, I think for me, deliberate leadership really starts with being intentional. A deliberate leader doesn't just react to what's happening, they really respond with purpose. And they create what I call a pause between stimulus and response. And in between that space lies emotional intelligence, clarity, and better decision making. And if you think about the three traits or three qualities that I often see in effective deliberate leaders, that would be self-awareness, so that they know who they are, what drives them, and their impact on others. Empathy, their ability to lead and connect from a place of humanity, not hierarchy. And then the third one is clarity. So being able to really create that direction and be very clear in their direction and instill confidence even during times of uncertainty.
Yeah, beautiful. That's three easy ones, I think, to remember too, Simi, around that self-awareness, empathy, and clarity. You mentioned that pause between stimulus and response, which in my conversations with leaders, a lot of them give me the sense that theoretically they know that. And I think in an ideal world, when we're having a great day or even a good day, let's not even go to great, but a good day where we're feeling like we're rested on top of it, I reckon it's easier to find that moment, because that self-awareness has to come in before we can go, I'm reacting here. From your experience, what's the best way to create that awareness around, stimulus, now pause, and then before I respond or react, I'm really going to think here. What's the best way to do that, Simi?
Yeah, that's such a great question because it sounds so simple, doesn't it, to say we just need to pause. When we talk about the pause is essentially being able to connect back in to notice your emotions, feelings, and thoughts. And, a key way that I teach leaders to do this is through the combination of psychology and practice. So the psychology is really getting to understand what is the impact of your thoughts, emotions, on how you then feel, behave, act, how you respond and react to situations. And then it's looking at building in micro habits to anchor the ability to pause in those moments. So an example of that is the 5 Qs formula that I talk about in my book, Productivity Joy. And essentially, this is a tool that you can use at the start of your day, and it involves asking yourself 5 science-backed quick questions that have been trialed and tested. And those questions really help to anchor your emotions, thoughts, feelings, and intention for the day that you have ahead of you. So, that tool that you can use at the start of the day. And then often when you are in situations where you need to be able to, people are looking for answers, people are looking for responses from you. It's then being able to take that moment, even if it's just 10 seconds, doesn't need to be long, but just 10 seconds to just step away, or just bring your composure and your thoughts into, that center, to just say, I would like 1 minute or just 10 seconds here just to compose and have a think of how I'm going to deal with this. And what that does is it just creates space. It creates space for us to recognize and acknowledge our emotions, what we're feeling in that moment. And then what it allows you to do, it gives you a choice on how you're going to respond. Perhaps you may not need to say anything. Perhaps you may not need to give an answer in that moment. But what it allows you to do is it gives you a choice.
That the 5 questions, Simi, and they do feature in your Productivity Joy book, and I'm going to link that in the show notes so people can get a copy of that. Are you happy to give us an overview of what those are? So you're mentioning that at the start of your day, really the message I got there is to help you prepare for the day ahead and really get in the zone.
Yeah.
Can you give us a bit of an insight into those prompts and the things that you'd be asking yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a great way to remember the 5 Qs is through the acronym PRIME. I'll just very quickly step you through what those stand for. The P is for pinpointing your emotions. So you're not going into a therapy session with yourself in the morning, no, but we do provide a tool very quickly for you to notice what emotion you are experiencing. And many of us as adults, we are operating in survival mode. We're constantly reacting to fires. We're constantly leading without connecting with ourselves first and our emotions. And first and foremost, we are all emotion beings. Our bodies, our minds, our neural system responds to the environment before our brain does. So we need to be able to connect to that first and foremost. So very simply, the P is for pinpoint your emotions. The R is for recognize and cultivate gratitude. So many people have different gratitude practices in place. We have a gratitude practice as part of the framework that cultivates a deeper level and benefit of serotonin and dopamine in your brain at the start of the day, which, as we know, are the feel good, happy good hormones that really give you that motivation to and that energy to set you up at the start of the day. And then we look at the I. The I is to identify what's working well and what could be working better in your environment. So many of us start the day due to the way that our brains are hardwired, we tend to focus on the negative, the things that are not going well, the things that are potential threats to us and that are going to cause us harm. Now, our brain has been, developed and has evolved over these hundreds and thousands of years to operate in this way. We need to be able to hack that negativity bias at the start of the day so that we can start looking for those small micro aspects of our day that are positive, that are constructive. But we need to be able to prime our mind to do that, because once it does that a couple of times in the morning, you kick off a domino effect. And then that domino effect happens because you start to notice other things throughout the day as well that are positive and constructive for you. And then we talk about the M. The M is make a list of 3 high impact tasks you are going to do in your day. And when I say this, many people, I see the look of shock on their face, like, Simi, I've got so much more than 3 things that I need to do today. And I completely appreciate that. The thing is, out of that very long laundry list of things that you've got to do, there will be only a handful of things that are really going to move the needle for you in your career, in your leadership, in the key deliverables that you need to deliver that day. So my invitation here with this question is to help leaders become very clear at the start of the day if there's 3 high impact tasks that they're going to ensure they get done. They don't always have to be big tasks. They could be something really small. It could be, ensuring that a team member really feels seen, heard, and valued when they're in a performance conversation with you. Those are the things that move the needle. So allowing yourself to identify your 3 high impact tasks each day. And if you think about it, Rita, if we do that every single day, so say 5 days a week, that's 15 high impact tasks we get done in a week. Over the course of a month, that's 60 things that are really going to move the needle. So what this question does is it allows you to cut through the noise, get crystal clear, and have a real purpose about how you invest your energy, time, and focus. And then lastly, the E in the PRIME acronym is envision how you want to show up for your day. This is the invitation for leaders to just very quickly connect back to their values, their superpowers, their strengths, and remind themselves of which one of those, 1 or 2, are they going to really bring to the forefront for their day. So regardless of what situations or challenges come their way, they've primed their mindset to respond, hopefully showing up true to their values, who they are, and who they want to be as a leader.
Yeah, I love that, Simi. And so again, another easy one to remember. And if a leader wants to engage in those 5 Qs, the 5 questions, but in particular PRIME, how much time do you reckon they need to set aside to do that of a morning if they're going to start their day that way?
I love that you asked this because this was a key focus when we developed the framework, and we trialed it and tested it with over 100 leaders globally, from corporate clients all the way through different industries to business owners, working parents, and even in schools with educators and students. And my aim was to ensure that we can have a framework that's trial tested, proven, and it can work in 5 minutes.
Oh, great.
And the reason why that 5 was really key, Rita, is because I don't know about you, but if something's going to take me longer to do than 5 minutes, I'm going to think about it again and again and again because, really value my time and commitments and where I'm focusing my energy. But it was really important to ensure that the formula and the framework was able to deliver those benefits because we all have 5 minutes that we can allow ourselves at the start of the day. So I have some clients that will use the 5 Qs as they're getting ready in the morning. They have, the 5 Qs poster on their mirror. I have some clients who have now prompted ChatGPT with the 5 Qs. ChatGPT now has a conversation with them around the 5 Qs. I have some clients that will do the 5 Qs when they're making their morning coffee or when they're on their commute to dropping off the children to school, or when they've dropped their kids off and they're sat in the car park or commuting to work. I personally use the 5 Qs in the morning on my way to the gym. It's a 6-minute drive from home to the gym, and I go through the 5 Qs.
Yeah, that is wonderful. And it's an easy one to follow. It's not onerous, but I think it sets up your day. And what I love about it, because I think for so many of us, the phone's next to the bed, we use it as the alarm clock, we turn the alarm off, and then the first thing we might do is, jump into email or jump onto socials. And that is like a big doom cloud, over the day, because you've not, it's so easy for your day to be sabotaged with stuff that's sitting on that device, as opposed to what this feels like for me is a really nice way to positively direct the day. Kind of like take control, but it's like you in charge of your day, you directing it.
So true, Rita. And if we look at the psychology of that, the morning time is the time where your brain is more malleable. Your prefrontal cortex, your executive functioning is really primed, or really kind of clear and fresh to be primed. So that morning time is just that very opportune time to really set your day up. Like you said, before we get distracted with notifications, emails, all of the other things that take away our attention. And what happens with those things is, without us realizing it, it switches us into autopilot mode. And that autopilot mode is, we are then not thinking deliberately, intentionally about what we want to focus on, how we want to feel. And then we wonder why, we get through the day and small things, trigger us, or something, we react to something. And if we're able to be very intentional, we're able to then have better control of ourselves, our responses, and the impact that we really want to have throughout the day, all the way through to the end.
Yeah. Simi, I'm sure you've had this question before. I get a lot of people say to me, my energy is better at the end of the day. So I'm, a bit more of a night owl. Could you use the 5 Qs as a reflective practice if you wanted to? Have you had people want to kind of change it for those that are, consider that they are better of a night time as opposed to the morning?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So majority of people use it in the morning. We do have 3 reflective questions at the end of the day. So just going back to the 5 Qs, I have clients and leaders that use it throughout the day. So they might even use elements of the 5 Qs. For example, before they are going to show up for an important meeting or important presentation, they will quickly go through the 5 Qs. Before they are going to deliver a tough feedback conversation, they will especially go through that last question of, how am I going to show up? How do I envision myself showing up for this conversation? Those priming tools and questions are really helpful at various points in your day. And then coming back to your question, at the end of the day, it can be, for those that are night owls, depending on what you're going to be doing for the rest of the evening and into the night, sure, absolutely use the 5 Qs. If you are going to be, interacting with others, if you're needing to show up, at your prime, at your most effective, I would encourage you to use it then as well. In the book, we mentioned 3 reflective questions. So I found that very effective leaders will create space to reflect at the end of the day. And 3 questions that you can ask yourself at the end of the day are, what worked well in my day? So that could be, what are the things that you did that worked well? What could have gone better? So really addressing just some of the things that might not have all gone to plan, but what are some of those learnings? And then the third one is, what did I learn about myself? And I think the more we can get into that habit of really answering that third question of, what did I learn today about myself? We are allowing ourselves and enabling a habit to form to deepen our own self-awareness.
Yeah.
And quite often we don't make time to do that.
No. And I think, where we started this conversation was, you mentioned being intentional, trying not to react, and having that pause between stimulus and response. And I think the more we can use questions like that as reflective questions, for me, even around deliberate leadership, it's about a practice. And it's the more you do it, the more you refine it. There'll be some days where it's a little more effortless than others. It's a bit like going to the gym. Some days you're feeling awesome and you're able to lift heavy, and sometimes you're not. And it is a practice. There's a consistency and a rhythm and a discipline, I think, that comes with all of these things, rather than once-offs, that you might do every quarter or every month.
Yeah, it's a daily micro habit. If we talk about fitness when we go to the gym. Our fitness is only going to be maintained when we keep going. Same with mental fitness. The 5 Qs is a real opportunity to implement mental fitness each and every day to maintain that real focus, intention, and be in control of the impact that you want to have. And it's one of those things, Rita, that you may start it for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Life gets in the way or you forget to do it. It's okay. It's one of these tools that you can pick back up again anytime and then still start getting the benefits from it.
What prompted you to develop Simi, these 5 Qs, but also that the prime method, but then also the reflective questions? Maybe give us a little bit, around the background to it, what prompted it for you. And you did mention there's been over 100 leaders that tested it, so you must be getting some really good data and feedback around it now too.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I was at a time in my life where nearly 5.5 years ago now, feeling stressed, overwhelmed, burnt out. I'm not proud to say, but my family had a little nickname for me that they would call me in jest, and that was the Bull, because they would see me charging through life, really, trying to get everything done, being everything to everyone. And on the outside, it looked like, everything was great. The business was going well, career-wise was going well, 2 beautiful children, all of this. But it was a complete mirror moment for me, Rita, when my own family, my children, my husband were getting that stressed, irritated, distracted, disconnected version of me. And my clients, on the other hand, were, making great progress with the work that we were doing. But unfortunately, I wasn't putting into practice what I was sharing in a way. So this was a complete mirror moment for me. I knew that things needed to change and the change needed to begin with me. So putting on my psychology hat, being the people nerd that I am, I went away, started to do more research, not more research, but looking at what are the high performing athletes, professionals, doing out there to set their days up for success. And what I found, Rita, was many people were doing amazing things. They are running in the morning, meditation, yoga, their morning coffee. Some people like to go through and look at their calendar in the morning and set themselves up. Some people love to dance and, go for a morning walk. There's all these things. But I found a gap. And the gap was that reliable, science-backed system that we know that works, that primes your mindset. And this is where I wanted it to be, more than just setting intentions. I really wanted it to be backed by science so that we can be very confident that even if we are being precious about our time, and even if we're spending 5 minutes, we know the 5 minutes are going to be a micro practice that is going to give us the benefits that, that we really hope to get here. And those benefits are clearer thinking, being able to show up more connected and present, being able to make decisions from a place of calm rather than chaos. And then finally, experiencing more fulfillment and joy in our day, in what we do, how we show up, and what we're able to deliver.
Yeah, I love it, Simi. I think because it's an accessible tool, and as you said, it's like 6 minutes on your commute to wherever, right? It's a 5-minute tool with 5 questions. So I'm going to start it because I think that's great. And some of those things, I think, we might do bits and pieces of it. For me, the biggest thing that's jumping out is this factor that it needs to be a daily practice. And, this is more than 21 days or 30 days, whatever it takes to create a habit. It's committing to it daily and really making that commitment to yourself. Because I think, particularly for those of us that are in professional roles, we do hear this quite often. We show up for our teams almost as a sense of duty and obligation, but then we let the guard down with the people around us that, where we know that there's a buffer and they're probably going to tolerate sometimes behaviours that are. But they're the ones that we know that the impact of those behaviors and those interactions can be felt long time after they occur. So yeah, thank you for that, Simi, because I think it's great to hear that off the back of your personal experience, which I think would, others would really resonate with those moments where we're feeling under pressure, burnt out professionally, everything's sailing along well, but then it's at what cost, so.
Yeah. And if you think about it, our loved ones, our nearest and dearest, if they're not getting the best of us, then why are we doing what we're doing?
Yeah.
So for me, that mirror moment was so important. And, sometimes the bull still comes out, and my children will tease me. But it's a great reminder because they also know and have really noticed and have benefited from me being more calm, intentional, clear, and present and connected. It's helped with our relationships, it's helped with the way that we communicate, it's really helped with them being more calmer in themselves and being able to regulate their own emotions. And just think if we bring that into the workplace, I always often say that we are, as adults, big kids in the workplace.
Yeah.
And, your team, your clients, people around you are looking to the managers, looking at the leaders for direction and for signaling what is the right tone and the appropriate behavior. And if we're not doing that as leaders and able to show up in that way, then we're missing a real opportunity to create and cultivate a culture that is not only high performing, but also with joy to be part of.
Yeah. It's that what I'm hearing in that, Simi, is choice, right? So I mean, often we might have a thought or a moment where we go, I don't have a choice, I've got a reaction here. But it's, I think, setting yourself up with this framework that you mentioned. I think it would be easier then to make the choice because you've just created more space, more intentionality, more gaps just to think. And with that thinking time, I think comes the choice around, okay, I've got a choice here around how I choose to respond.
Absolutely. And, even blocking in that time in your calendar, something's not in my calendar, Rita, it doesn't happen. And if that time is in the calendar, treat it like a meeting, thinking time, being reflective and thinking is a strategic advantage. It's a strategic meeting, but with yourself.
That's right.
So I think honoring it in that way can really help leaders, managers, those that are operating in high pressure environments, in environments where people are looking to them for decisions, setting the tone. They're looking for clarity, they're looking for direction, they're looking for the person that's going to set the tone. And this is where leaders are able to better help themselves to respond and have that choice, as you say, to respond rather than react and be on autopilot mode. Because the last thing we want is to feel out of control. This gives you a very structured, clear framework to be more in control.
Yeah, I love it, Simi, and I think it's easy to implement. So I know that's going to be super useful for people that are listening. Simi, in relation to we talk about deliberate leadership, and you've given us a really clear indication of what it is for you. So that you said self-awareness, empathy, clarity. Are there any misconceptions or almost myths that you feel and that maybe you've heard in your practice in supporting leaders that you would just love the opportunity to squash it and go, no, that is definitely not deliberate leadership?
Oh, what a great question. I would say there's a misconception that deliberate leadership or intentional leadership could be a bit too slow and too reflective.
Yeah.
Too slow to make decisions, too reflective, and in that sense, they're not going to be able to keep the pace or drive pace and drive high performance. But in reality, with all the work that I've done over the last 20 years with leaders across different industries, I found deliberate leaders make faster, smarter decisions because they've already done that inner work. But the challenge really is that most leaders are in survival mode. They're constantly firefighting. And this is where, you know, I believe, and the research shows and our evidence shows, that the 5 Qs, or a tool like the 5 Qs, that 5-minute daily practice really helps leaders shift from autopilot into intentional action. And, you know, if we think about it, Rita, if we are mentally or emotionally depleted, we can't be deliberate. You know, that cliche saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And leadership is no different.
Yeah. And it's recently I was reading some material on the amount of leaders that are actually choosing to leave leadership, which is frightening. There's 1 in 5, according to the study, that are actually considering leaving their leadership roles. And many are pointing to things like burnout and being diagnosed, you know,
Yeah.
as opposed to I'm just having a bad day. And I think there's an urgency that comes with it. So I love what you're saying there. You know, one of the myths is it's too slow or reflective, because that any time that you spend kind of doing that additional thinking, that strategizing, that meeting with yourself that you mentioned, is no doubt time that you're going to save on the other end, because it'll avoid rework. It means you're not backtracking, and probably giving your team a greater sense of stability, I imagine also.
Correct, correct. And, you know, with that stability, what it does is it instills trust.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, a key quality of an effective leader is to instill trust in their team. And when we get trust right, people really feel that their leaders and their managers have their back. They feel safe to speak up, share their ideas, contribute, and speak up when things are not right, or when they've made a mistake, they will own it. We get greater levels of accountability and ownership when we are working for a leader that we trust. So a big part of, you know, the 5 Qs and priming your mind is helping leaders become that trusted leader. We, you know, run a program called the Trusted Leader Program, which essentially helps leaders to develop those skills. And in essence, what they're doing is they're learning how to better become a joy to work for and do business with. And when you think of your leader as being, you know, someone that, oh, I feel really proud to follow this leader, I feel really inspired to follow this leader, quite often it's because you felt seen, recognized, valued by your leader. You know that if you've made a mistake, you can go to them and you can tell them, and they're not going to punish you or, you know, shame you, but they're going to support you and walk together with you to solution and to learn from it. They're also going to, you know, share your, you know, the great work that you're doing and create opportunities for you to be visible. These are all real key behaviors of, you know, trusted, inclusive leaders. And when people are on the receiving end of that, they really then feel that they would actually like to, they're not being forced, but they would like to move mountains for their leader, because they know their leader's got their back and the leader is a joy to work for.
Yeah, I think it's a massive part of connectedness in a team, that feeling of belonging, commitment,
Yes.
and a big part of psychological safety, obviously, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think psychological safety is a real key component of this, because when there's trust, underpinning trust is safety. How safe do I feel that I can share what I really think, that I can be my authentic self, that I can not have to pretend that I've got it all together, but I'm a little bit unfiltered. And in that unfiltered mode, innovation, creativity, the real thoughts, and being on a very clear page comes out.
Yeah. Simi, with being deliberate, you know, one of the misconceptions you mentioned there is that it's too slow and almost too reflective, and we're not moving quickly enough. The other thing I hear leaders say, which I wouldn't mind exploring with you, is when we're deliberate, there's a notion in people's minds that therefore you're very fixed, you've decided. So decisive is often one of those cousin kind of words that comes with deliberate. And a lot of leaders struggle with being adaptable. So there's great to be adaptable, great to be flexible, great to respond to what's happening in the market and with your team. But I guess the downside of that is flip-flopping around, and what I call the flip-flop manager, that you can't pin down and make it, they don't tend to make a fixed decision, and they kind of sway with depending on who you're speaking to.
Yeah.
So how can leaders that are wanting to really be deliberate and develop a deliberate leader practice, how do they navigate this, the contrast between being adaptable but also not being too much of a flip-flop leader?
Yeah, look, I don't see adaptability and deliberateness as opposites. I actually see them being very complementary to each other. And in that way, what I see is a deliberate leader knows when to pivot and when to pause because they are in tune. They're in tune with themselves. They're in tune and connected to what's going on around them. And when you're in tune, you are able to notice changes. You're able to notice when things are not quite right. So in that sense, it gives you a better opportunity to be flexible, to be adaptable, and to pivot. So if you think about it, during a major change, deliberate leaders don't cling on to control and are fixed in a certain way of doing things. What they are, though, they are very intentional and deliberate in how they communicate, in showing that they care for their people and that they keep that people-centered approach. So being deliberate, I would argue, absolutely helps you become more adaptive, so effectively adaptable, and it allows you to be authentic and connected.
I think it's a good message for people that struggle with that, and I know a lot do. And given the current at the time of recording now, we're in October 2025, and I mean, we thought COVID was the biggest kind of thing that we had to deal with, and then throw in the issues that we've had globally over the last couple of years. And I think I was saying to someone the other day, change is no longer an event or a program that we run. It's happening all the time. So it's about choosing a mindset around how we respond to it. And I love that your call out there around adaptability being complementary to being deliberate, and maybe we've dispelled a myth or two there about the rigidity sometimes in the inflexibility that comes with that word deliberate, perhaps.
Yeah, I'd agree because with a fixed mindset, we see things as quite binary, that it's either got to be this way or that way, or I'm right and you're wrong. With a growth mindset, you are able to weigh up multiple options. And you can only do that when you're allowing yourself to intentionally show up with a growth mindset or deliberately choosing which mindset you are going to show up with. So I think, if we take the literal word of deliberate, it can be easy to falsely associate that with rigidity and inflexibility. But taking it in light of the work that we both do and the conversation we're having today, I really hope it is clear that it's more about the opposite. It's about adaptability, flexibility, and a growth mindset.
Yeah, the way I think Simi used the word, you're tuned in, which goes back to that theme of the pause, reflect, just being aware. And if we can create those moments where we just do the check-in, then we are tuned in, and we're tuning ourselves, if you like, kind of throughout the course of the day, just to get a sense of where we're at, what's stimulating us to respond in a particular way and what we can do about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have triggers.
Yeah.
And being able to know what your own triggers are, being aware of them, noticing before they even show up, that's all deepened self-awareness. And the most effective leaders have that self-knowledge. They've developed that self-knowledge. They've taken the time to be very intentional and deliberate about deepening their insight on who they are, how they respond during times of pressure and stress. And in that way, they're better able to serve whoever they are leading and their teams in those moments of crisis, because they've done a lot of that inner work and they do it regularly. It's something that they build as a continual habit.
Yeah, I love it. Simi, in addition to, I mean, you've given us so many great gifts today, and that's the, the 5 questions prime, the 3 reflective questions at the end of the day. When you're working with leaders, is there anything else that you suggest to them around developing and maintaining a very deliberate leadership practice that you want to share with listeners today?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. In addition to scheduling that time, the 5 Qs, I would say schedule in the reflection time at the end of the day. Again, that only needs to be 5 or 10 minutes because thinking time is leadership. Yeah, so really being able to make the most of creating that space. Secondly, ask for feedback regularly from your team. A lot of leaders shy away from doing that, or they assume they know what their leaders are their teams are thinking. But asking for feedback regularly really helps to build that self-awareness a lot faster. It allows you to stay in tune with your team. Yeah. And then thirdly, I would say always take a moment for whatever decision that you are making, to link it back to the purpose and to the people.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about process. It's really about linking it back to people and to purpose. And if you think about it, how we show up as a leader is so contagious. I always say that our energy is more contagious than your strategy ever will be.
That's true. Yeah.
So, if we can really allow ourselves to be mindful, conscious, notice our energy, instantaneously you are making a bigger shift in the impact that you're going to have.
Yeah, I love that. So quotable. Energy is more contagious than your strategy. That's Simi. Simi, I want to ask you about your global joy mission. I know it's a project that's significant for you. So tell us about it, and how can we help you and support you in this?
It is a important mission, dear to my heart. I shared with you my story of being called the bull and the formula that I've developed. When I started to do research, Rita, the research alarmed me that a staggering 82% of professionals out in the world feel stressed, overwhelmed, at the brink of burnout. That's 8 out of 10 people that we know. And you and I know that when leaders are feeling like this, it's very difficult for them to be able to make clear decisions, be innovative, show up in a trusted leader way for their teams. And quite frankly, they don't experience much joy. And quite frankly, they're not a joy to be around either. But so, we've got a pandemic going on here. It's an epidemic of 82% of leaders feeling like this. And in fact, it costs Australian organisations up to $60 billion in lost productivity and disengagement. So there's a real commercial loss here as well. I'm very concerned about the loss of joy because it's robbing us all of our joy. So when I think about this 82%, I think collectively we can all flip that script so that 82% of people and leaders out there feel calm, intentional, and clear at the start of their day. So my aim with the Global Joy mission is to equip and empower 5 million people globally across boardrooms, workplaces, classrooms, in communities, in their lives and homes, to be able to shift by 2030 from daily survival mode and autopilot mode to daily thriving. So my invitation would be that, if there are people here listening that connect with the 5 Qs, that connect with this mission of being able to flip the script so that 8 out of 10 people can show up with clarity, joy, trust, and impact each and every day, I would really invite you to try the 5 Qs for yourself. See what shifts for you in terms of how you think, feel, and act. And then share it with those around you. Share it with your teams, share it with your loved ones. Consider, working with us in terms of the Productivity Joy workshops, programs, trusted leader programs. There's a lot of different ways that you can really take those steps forward. But I would first and foremost encourage you to start with yourself, because leadership, really starts here, first and foremost, with ourselves. And I think in this way, we are then helping leaders to be able to start their days in a effective, consistent way, so that they don't just perform better, but their teams also perform better. And I think that's where the real magic of deliberate intentional leadership is. It really creates joy, trust, and impact. And that's our hope with the Global Joy mission.
Yeah, it's wonderful, Simi. And I think that, it's something, it's achievable. 5 million is a big number, but it's achievable when you think about those alarming results of 82% feeling stressed to the point of being burned out. And it absolutely matches some of that literature that I'm coming across with 1 in 5 leaders wanting to leave their roles in leadership. These are people that have been promoted, worked really hard to get there, and then they kind of get there and go, what am I doing? I'm not feeling joyful. In fact, I'm feeling quite the opposite.
Correct.
So it's a challenge out there, Simi, that I'm happy to put out to this community to see if they're willing to do it. I think it's, you've prompted so many thoughts that, as I said, are accessible and, easy for people to do. But I, anticipate that it's going to create significant change. And wouldn't it be nice to see that 82% are not feeling stressed out and, wanting to stay in their jobs of leaders?
This is a world that, I believe collectively we can all create. And it starts with each one of us. And also we can then create workplaces where people don't feel like they are surviving, but they're thriving. And that's the joy. That is real, true joy. So I would love for leaders that are out there that are wanting to make an impact and are wanting to create shifts and changes that last, to really think about getting involved in the Global Joy mission. And thank you, Rita, for being able to share that with your community as well.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Where can they find more information, Simi, about the Global Joy mission and all your fantastic work?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn and my website, 𝗵𝗵𝗃.com. Yeah, there's lots of information on there as well.
Beautiful. We'll pop it all in the show notes. Simi, thank you so much for joining us today on the Deliberate Leader podcast. It's been a joy to speak to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Rita, so much.
Hey, it's Rita here, and I've just finished a beautiful conversation with Simi Rayat. Simi is the author of Productivity Joy, and you will no doubt agree with me that what a wonderful conversation. Has given us so much to think about around how we can really set up our day to be more deliberate, more intentional. So she runs us through her 5 Qs, which is her framework in the book Productivity Joy. She runs us through, how we can set up our day for more clarity, more self-awareness, more empathy, and more intention, and also helps us with some tips on how we can close out our day. So the essence of this conversation was about creating time and space. It's something that as leaders, we don't have a lot of, but if we continue to use that excuse of I don't have time and continue to have that as a resistor, we're not going to do anything differently. The other shout out from Simi is to help her to get as many people as she can to subscribe to her Global Joy mission. So she's looking for 5 million people globally to really incorporate her practices on a daily basis, to avoid things like burnout and, that stress and the complexity that comes with working and parenting and leading and doing all the things that so many of us are doing. So I hope you really enjoyed that conversation with Simi. I certainly did. Jump onto her website and grab a copy of her book. I'll see you soon.